Okay, let's talk about Boris Johnson. We need to talk about Boris yet again, or maybe not. But here's the point. Ex-David Davis aide, a senior aide to David Davis, a man called James Chapman, who used to work for the Daily Mail, was their political editor before he went into politics, stopped working for David Davis after the election and has now come out and said that Boris Johnson and other pro-Brexit campaigners should be jailed, amongst other things, for their allegedly bogus claims over things like the £350 million that they said would be funneled into the NHS after we left the EU. This is a pretty strong thing to say, especially for someone who, I guess, used to work for the Daily Mail and used to work for David Davis. What on earth is going on? We try to get James Chapman on the line. Unfortunately, we can't get him on the line, but we can talk to Tom Brake. He's a Liberal Democrat MP for Carshalton and Wallington, has been there since 1997 and is the Brexit spokesman for the party. Good morning, Tom.
Good morning.
How are you?
Oh, I'm very well this morning, thank you.
So what do you make of James Chapman's statement that Boris Johnson, amongst others, should be jailed over their Brexit claims?
Well, I've got some very strong views about what Boris Johnson, Michael Gove, Liam Fox and others said during the EU referendum campaign, but even I am not advocating they should go to prison. It's not entirely clear what charge Mr. Chapman thinks they would be guilty of.
Indeed. So do you think this is not particularly helpful? If you're someone with second thoughts about Brexit and, maybe you're a kind of recent Remainer who has doubts about how they voted last year, to hear that kind of comment, helpful or unhelpful?
No, I don't think it's particularly helpful. I think what we need to focus on instead is what is actually happening in relation to Brexit and the negotiations, for instance. So we've seen that the top three priorities, so whether it's giving rights for EU citizens, whether it's working out whether the UK has to pay a settlement or whether it's sorting out the border between Ireland and Northern Ireland, frankly, there's very little progress that is being made on these things, and the clock is ticking.
Right. But to be fair to James Chapman, what he actually wrote is, let's be honest, if we had an effective electoral law, and your party's always about changing the electoral law, leading Brexiteers would now be in jail for misleading the country.
Well, it's true that with hindsight, I think both camps agree that having an independent adjudicator, which has happened in other countries, in other referenda, who would have been able to say, you can't claim that there's going to be £350 million a week for the NHS, or alternatively, you can't claim that people are going to be £4,000 a year worse off. With hindsight, yes, we should have had that, and that would have got rid of some of the more ludicrous claims that were made during that campaign.
He also says here in one of his tweets, it's past time for sensible MPs in all parties to admit that Brexit is a catastrophe, come together in a new party, if need be, and reverse it. So, I mean, this is something that you above all as a member of the LibDem should be agreeing with, right? I mean, your party is the only one that stands out there that has openly said we want a second referendum on the actual deal, but you didn't do terribly well in the election. You know, you need all the help you can get from any Remainers out there, either on the Labour side or the Tory side, but it's not going to happen, is it?
Well, I agree. There is not going to be a new party formed. There's natural inertia within political parties. People like me, I've been a member of the Lib Dems for more than 30 years. To jump ship, in effect, would be a huge wrench. So I don't think it's going to happen. And of course, the history of attempts to do this, the SDP in the 1980s, there was a brief sort of flurry of interest, and then the party died away. So I don't think it's going to happen. But I think what is possible within the present party arrangements is the idea of a loose coalition of Liberal Democrats, Labour, and indeed some Conservatives. We're hoping that some of the Conservatives Remainers, and there were a majority in the Conservative Party, will start to acknowledge that Brexit is not exactly going very smoothly, and that a hard Brexit, which seems to be what is on offer, is going to cause maximum damage to British jobs and British families, and they may want to start sticking their heads above the parapet. And the first chance they've got to do that is with the repeal bill, which we perhaps might be joined by some people who have people like Bill Cash, who has campaigned for parliamentary sovereignty. This bill is completely trashing parliamentary sovereignty. It gives full powers to government to completely disregard Parliament.
But the minute someone like Bill Cash does that, he'll be open to the accusation probably levelled by the Daily Mail that he's a traitor to the people's cause, and he doesn't want that.
Well, he could turn around and say, well, I've been consistent throughout my parliamentary career. I've always placed a priority on the UK Parliament having sovereignty. He must accept that the repeal bill is trampling all over UK parliamentary sovereignty because it means that the government can rewrite huge chunks of legislation without the need for primary legislation, and that is not acceptable.
OK, Tom Brake, thank you very much indeed.